Well, would you look at that? We finally have some news. It's early September. It is 2 months before these consoles launch, and we finally have a price and a date for one of the two consoles, or two of the four consoles, I guess. Jumping right into it, Xbox has announced the Xbox Series S officially. For the first time, we all knew, like everyone kind of knew, this has been rumored before the PS5 digital was announced, but it was basically confirmed when the PS5 digital was announced that Xbox was going to have some kind of competitor to the PS5 digital. And we are finally able to say that we know that exists and that we know what it costs. And I think props to Microsoft because they have taken control of the news cycle. So the basic facts, the Xbox Series S and the Xbox Series X come out on November 10th, which is a Tuesday, which surprised me. But they come out on November 10th, and the Xbox Series S costs $299, and the Xbox Series X costs $499. Now, if you look back at what I predicted, or I think what a lot of people were predicting was, I thought it was going to be the Series S was $499 and the Series X was $599. Or at worst, or at best, I guess, the Series S would be $399 and X would be $499. But now they come out and they say that the Series S is $299, and that's just a game changer. Now, this all came out because of a leak that I think at Windows Central, that they just came out and they said, hey, Series S is real. Of course it is. But Series S is real. It's coming out at $299. The Series X is at $499 and November 10th. And Xbox, that came out at late night on Monday night. And then Xbox, an hour or two later, posts like a meme on Twitter and then the official confirmation that the Series S is real and that it's going to cost $299. And then just a day later or so that the Series X is coming out, it's $499, and it's all coming out November 10th, and pre-order starts September 22nd. I just want to say thank God that this leak happened, because it seemed like it was still going to be a while before they announced anything. I think Phil hinted that it was going to be next week, but even then, like, who really knows? Who knows what that means, if there was going to be some event or if they were just going to tweet it. But it's good that we've had this game of chicken, this just like embarrassing game of chicken that's childish between the two biggest gaming companies in the world. They're like, no, you announce first. No, you announce first. No, you announce first. And now it's like, finally, with no one's permission, we finally have the information from Xbox, and hopefully PlayStation comes next. So it did seem for the longest time incredibly weird that they were taking so long to announce literally anything about the consoles. Like, we knew that because of the pandemic that everything was thrown up in the air. No one planned for this. They definitely had their plans for E3 or the time around E3 to announce whatever, and then everything was just put up in upheaval, and Xbox had to scramble and do their thing. And PlayStation, I think, probably wouldn't have changed anything because I don't think they were going to be at E3 anyway. But obviously, everything's different than it was supposed to be. But I think that this news confirms to me that Xbox was going to announce the Series S and price for both of them at E3, because I think I'm just imagining the press conference where they're at the start of the conference, they're like, oh, haha, Series X and also Series S, and then they go through all the games and they're like Halo Infinite and Fable and Forza and all these different little things, different little nuggets. And then at the end, they're like, oh, blah, 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 cool, power, Xbox, starting at $299, and everyone flips out. I think that would have been so cool. But obviously that didn't happen. And from that point, it was a weird back and forth of, oh, PlayStation's going to announce at their event, so they have all these games, and then they're going to announce the console, and oh, price, date, no, and then Xbox comes in like a month later, and they're like, oh, here's games, and they temper expectations at the start that says this is only going to be about games and not about console or hardware or anything. So they're going back and forth. Neither of them have announced anything. PlayStation has these like 2 or 3 state of plays that are not about the PS5 at all. They're like, here's a PS4 state of play that's about like PSVR or about the games that are still coming to PS4 this year, even though there's like 3 of them. And then Xbox kind of like tweets out little tidbits here and there, like here's what the UI looks like, and here's what the power of the Series X is, and here's Game Pass and whatever. And then it's just this absurd game of chicken of who wants to go first. And to be honest, I'm really surprised that with the game of chicken that the prices are this good, or at least the price for the Series S. The only thing that I can think of is that Xbox wanted the advantage that PlayStation had in the last generation, because when Xbox announced the price for the Xbox One, it was $499. Everyone was kind of like, ooh, that was on the high end of what we were expecting. And then PlayStation comes out later. Granted, it was later that night. It wasn't like a week later or anything. And it definitely wasn't in September. But they come out later that night and say, oh, and we're offering the best value at $399. We have the best console. Bam, we win the generation. Like, that's kind of what happened. And it's kind of how it played out. And I think what Xbox wanted to do is say, here's PlayStation's price. It's $399, $499. Bam, we're $299. We are cheaper, and we are doing the same thing that PlayStation did. But and I think on the other side, PlayStation has the kind of the other thing where they wanted to. I think they might have thought that Xbox announcing first was better for them because they could kind of sneak it out. That's assuming it's more expensive. I think it's safe to assume for me that the digital is going to be $399 at worst, or at best at the lowest price. But if it's $299, then I really don't understand, and I'm completely off base here. But I think PlayStation was kind of trying to say like, oh, the PlayStation 5 normal will be also $499, and the digital will be $399, but we're not going to say anything about that. We're just going to ride the coattails of Xbox. That's not to like shit on PlayStation or anything. That's just to say that having a $100 more expensive console, as PlayStation knows, is detrimental to sales. So I think that's what they were doing. I think also if PlayStation were to announce that higher price first, it might have been a little disappointing, and it would have allowed for even more of a bounce back in terms of PR for Xbox in the way that PlayStation did in the last generation. But I also think that, honestly, the closer we got to launch, the closer we're getting to November, it feels like they're just not even caring about what the PR looks like, and they're more just taking the approach of a phone or of the Switch even, where the Switch didn't announce price or date until like a couple months ahead of time, and look at how the Switch is doing. So it didn't really matter, and I think they're kind of saying, we don't need to pigeonhole ourselves, especially this year where supply chains could be all screwed up, or prices or demand could be all changed. They're probably saying we don't need to pigeonhole ourselves into this date or this time, and instead we're just going to wait for a while. We'll wait till September. People will still buy it anyway. And yeah. So on to the details of the Series S. Obviously, I mentioned it's $299. It's coming out November 10th. And I believe the CPU is... Look, I don't talk specs. I don't understand what specs are. They're just a bunch of numbers to me, and I assume higher numbers are better. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like the Series S is not as good as the Series X, obviously, but I don't think it's as big of a jump from the Series S to the Series X as it was from the Xbox One to the One X, if that makes sense. So it's not like it's a full generational jump and they're just starting the generation with two different consoles, like two different incremental generations. I think it is just like, here's the a little less powerful one for a bit less money, or here's the really high flagship one for a bit more if you want that high end power. And all in all, I think this announcement is great for Xbox. This is in a string of kind of ambivalent, mostly negative news, where you have Halo being delayed, you have a bunch of games saying like, oh, or a bunch of publishers kind of distancing themselves from Xbox in favor of PlayStation. The Xbox event being a bit underwhelming compared to what it could have been or what we thought it was going to be. And then to have this happen, and I think a lot of people thought that Xbox coming into the fall was really going to get shelled in sales, in console sales, that is, and they were trying to make up for it in Game Pass. But when this news comes out, it's like the flip of a switch when people are talking about, well, this console's only $300. I don't really want to put out $500 for a PS5 if that's what it costs. And the Series S has like all but one or two of the same games that PlayStation's going to have over the next year or two. So why not just go for the $200 console and then buy the PS5 at a discount later? And then in doing that, I think Xbox would get them into, like, get their hooks into them and get them into the ecosystem. And that actually got me thinking, is Xbox selling the Series S at a loss? Because I know console margins are always tight. They're always tight. The publishers, game makers make their money on sales, on software sales, almost unilaterally. So the fact that Xbox just comes out and says, hey, it's way cheaper than anyone thought it was going to be, makes me really think that Xbox is taking a huge loss on the hardware here. And I think that's why they're trying to make it all back with Game Pass specifically. They're selling you the console. They say, hey, here's this for like almost nothing compared to what you were expecting to pay, and buy Game Pass. You can get all the games for it, and then by the time that it's either time to upgrade your console or you're thinking of buying a PS5, you're like, oh, well, why would I buy a PS5? I already have all this Game Pass stored up, and I love these games, and I think it's a really cool idea. Why not just continue on Xbox? And then that's where they make their money. It's the same idea as what Netflix does, or even what the iPhone does. Like, why would I switch to an Android phone when I have all my contacts and all my apps and my cloud saves and all my messages and everything on iPhone? So I might as well just stay on iPhone and buy a new one. That's kind of what that is. And more to the point, like iPhone, it's about generational increments. Like the Xbox One to the One X, the Series S and Series X are the first two steps in what looks like they're going to be a sequence of generational increments. So when we get the Series S2 or X2 or Y or whatever they call it, that's where they're going to start getting that brand loyalty and really blurring the lines between generations. So it's not like they don't have that player crossover like they had from Xbox 360 to PS4. They're hoping that it's like, oh, this is the Series S or Series X and Series S2, Series X2. You know what? I'm not going to buy an S2 right now, but I'll buy an X2 when it comes out, or I'll actually just wait for the X3. Like, that kind of deal. And these first two consoles are just entry points into that next phase, that probably long-term phase for Xbox specifically, but also PlayStation's probably going to do a similar thing. I do want to keep a little caution here, because the news here has been almost universally positive with regards to the $300 price point, and I mean the date just existing now, I guess. I am a little worried that they are going to kind of leave the Series S behind earlier than people think. Now, I don't mean by that like Fable or Forza are not going to be playable on Series S, because I don't think that's true. But when like that, those are going to be playable on the One X and I think the One S. So it's hard to believe that they wouldn't be playable on Series S. But I do think that if you get to like 2024 or 25, you get a couple generational increments down the line, you do what the iPhone does. I really think they're modeling their business model off the iPhone, where you get to the Series S3, let's say, and it's like the iPhone X or the iPhone 8 or whatever versus the iPhone 4. And eventually you get to where these consoles are just not powerful enough to play those games that are going to be playable down the line in 5 or 6 years. So they leave the One S or the Series S behind, but keep the Series X. I think that's probably where that price point is a little bit justified, is that it definitely gets your hooks, gets Xbox's hooks in you, but it also gets them more console sales down the line a little bit sooner. So if you have a Series X, it's probably going to last you a little longer with the innovation and development of games and more powerful games that require more powerful hardware. And the Series S just doesn't provide that in the same way that the X does. But pulling back a little bit, it's hard to say that Xbox is going to struggle as much as we thought they were even 3 or 4 days ago. Like, they have to announce more games. I think that's kind of where they're lacking for sure. Like, when you look at Xbox and PlayStation, the biggest difference in any category between the two of them is exclusive games that PlayStation just runs away with. Like, you can't even compare the exclusives, in my opinion, when you have things like The Last of Us and Ghost of Tsushima and Spider-Man and so on. But when it comes to everything else, well, not everything else, but a lot of other things, Xbox is either catching up or pulling ahead. And the game situation is really where, if they can figure that out, that's where they're going to find more long-term recurring success than what they've had, especially this generation. So I think this price specifically, just them announcing that the Series S is going to be $299, is a really, really good start for that. And while there are a couple of possible drawbacks to it, I think they're really going to hit harder than might have been expected right away, especially with the announcement that EA Play, formerly EA Access, is going to be part of Game Pass Ultimate now. And that Game Pass Ultimate has the cloud, xCloud, the streaming service. I think Game Pass Ultimate is, as I've said in the past, where they're going to get recurring revenue like a Netflix, but this is going to increase their hardware revenue that in a way that we didn't think was even possible just a couple weeks ago. But of course, I still think PlayStation has a bit of a leg up here, purely because of the install base. PlayStation 4, tripled the Xbox One in sales. So PlayStation 4 players are going to inherently want to buy a PlayStation 5 more than they're going to buy a Series S or a Series X. And they might be enticed to do a little bit more of buying the Series S now that it's $299, but PlayStation still has that advantage, and the ball is in their court right now. They've, as I'm recording this, they haven't announced price, they haven't announced a date, they've like barely announced anything about the hardware other than what it looks like and some of its specs. But I'm expecting that at some point within the next week or two, they have this same blowout of information. They're gonna come out, and maybe they say, like late this week, early next week, in a tweet, they say, "Oh, PlayStation 5 is starting at $399 or even $299. Find out more at the PlayStation 5 event sequel on Thursday or next Thursday or whatever." I think that would be a smart way to do it. Get the information out, get people speculating, get people talking, and most importantly, take PR away from Xbox, especially before their pre-orders come to open, which is in a little under a couple weeks now. PlayStation absolutely needs to get their price out by the time Xbox's pre-orders start, just so people who might be on the fence of buying them will jump on the PlayStation train instead of jumping on the Xbox train because they don't know what the PlayStation train looks like. So PlayStation is up next. They're up to bat. They're on deck, whatever you want to say. They are, it's theirs to lose, in my opinion, still. Even with this price, it's their generation or next few years to lose, but I think it's slipping. I think it's starting to slip away, and they don't have the most impressive launch lineup. No console does, but the PS5 launch lineup isn't particularly impressive, especially with Deathloop being delayed. And now they need to come out and say, here's why you need to buy a PS5 at launch, and not wait a year or two until it has a price drop or anything. And I'm excited to see it. I love PlayStation. I'm excited for the PS5. I'm excited for the Series S. I'm probably just monetarily, I'm gonna probably buy a Series S if I can, and then PS5 might come second, just purely because of financials. And I think a lot of people are like that. And if PlayStation can come out and either match it at $299 or come out and say it's $399, regardless, they need to say it. If it's $399, it's going to be detrimental to them. That's just objectively how it's going to work, because that's how money works. But they can't just say nothing. They can't wait another month and hope that everything dies down, because that's not going to happen. And I don't think they're planning on it, especially seeing how this coordinated response from Microsoft has happened over the past 2 days, and how they've announced everything at once, even though they weren't expecting to. Then I think Sony can do it, and I think they will do it soon, probably early next week. But we'll see. And I'm hoping for the best for both of them. I'm hoping for a fight, a close fight, one that is evenly matched and brings out some innovation in gaming. So, yeah, that's Xbox Series S, Series X, PlayStation 5. That's what that looks like for the next little while. Yeah, so that's that. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.